Good morning, everyone. This is Gail Anderson. This is Mentoring Moments for Moms. Good to have you joining us today. First of all, I have to apologize for not being on last week. You know, it's funny, I think now that I'm at this stage of life that I have total control over my time, that I can make decisions, make promises, and I will actually be able to do that. But you know what? I still have other people who are dependent on me, other people who need me at certain times. I still have a family, I still have grandchildren, children, a mom and dad in town, and things came up that did not work.
Pregnant daughter-in-law.
Well, I wasn't going to mention that, but she's doing fine. She's doing fine, yes. So we also have been gone. Thank you. Appreciate that, Tamara. We have been gone to Wisconsin, got a chance to minister at the church where we pastored for a long, long time, and had a wonderful time seeing all those people, sharing with them. It was really, really neat. So we got home late last night and we're determined to get back at it today. So I pulled Kirby in and said, time for you to get on here with me. Just want to remind you, if you like what we're talking about, please tap on the screen, give us some hearts. And just really appreciate your support. Thank you for joining us. We have been talking about household management, and I really thought a key to this is bringing Kirby in and just talking about standards for household management and how you have to balance those things between spouses. And the first thing I will say is that Kirby's a perfectionist, and I am not.
You're not going to be bashing me now, are you?
No. But he's a perfectionist, so he had completely different standards for things than I did. So that's where we had to have that coordination.
I'm in therapy.
Thank you all for getting on and joining us today. One of the first things, though, is we started out in the beginning and where I was just not as specific about things getting done, we learned that we had to coordinate on that. And I think for husbands, one of the major points is if they are gone during the day and coming home at the end of the day, you're the perfectionist. Well, I guess that's probably good, but you may have to let down on those standards too. But when a husband comes home at the end of the day, there's also some expectations that he has. And I want you to address that. What do you need when you come home at the end of a day? Kids or no kids? What do you want that household to be like?
Well, I remember way back, and especially in those days, really working hard to build a church, and it was a lot of long hours, and kids coming home, and whether I verbalized it or not or understood it, it was just home was my refuge, was my haven.
Okay. That makes
and
sense.
I discovered that after a while, I didn't understand it at first, but it seems like whenever you find, you spend a lot of time in a situation or at the office, and there's so much that is not within your control, you want to control as much as you can on the home front. And so it was just something, it was big to me, just to come home to something that looked like, okay, this isn't falling apart, and everything is where it needs to be, and it was picked up and orderly, and it just gave me that sense of, things are in control, it's not crazy, it's not clutter. Clutter tends to really make me anxious, and that was probably the biggest thing that I was looking forward to.
You really wanted home to be that haven
I did.
where you could come home and relax.
Yeah.
And especially as we started having children, that didn't always happen.
Nope.
And when we started homeschooling, you know, and I had books out and projects and things we've been doing. And I love to do that kind of stuff. And yet I'm not always that great about getting everything picked up and put back the way it should be. Now, somebody just had a comment here saying you are the perfectionist and your husband is always trying to get you to change that. You know what? It is a coordination.
Yeah.
And really, if we're not asking the other person what they expect and coordinating our standards, coming to agreement between the two of you, then somebody is barking up the wrong tree, doing something that doesn't need to be done. Now, if I had been the perfectionist and spent all my time picking up the house, he would have been coming home, even though he is very good about the clutter, even though he is the one that's the perfectionist, he still would have said, had you spent any time with the kids today?
Right.
Did you have fun? Did you get out of the house? And I'd be like, no, I'm just following after them and picking up. He wouldn't have been pleased with that either. It would have gotten to the point where he would have said, I want you to be able to have fun. You don't know how to let it go. Oh my goodness. Part of it is just being able to see yourself as a great person, a qualified person, an energized person, and it's not reflected in your household. Yes, it is an addiction. But if you can look past your desires for your needs and look at what the kids need, that they need time with you. For instance, let's say you have a couch in the living room and it's beautiful and the kids are never allowed to sit on it. Never. And they're not allowed to bring one toy into the living room. They can only be different places. Is that really, I have my first housekeeper comments by tomorrow to try to enjoy the holidays with my kids. Very good. Is that really what you want? Do you want your children to feel at home in the house, or do you want them to feel like there are things they can't touch, they can't move? Keeping it picked up is wonderful, and we can train them to put their things away or to keep toys in a certain area, but not to the point where they're getting scolded all the time and not able to sit and relax in their own house. And if they're bringing toys, that's right, it's all about balance. Finding that balance. If you are so focused on being a perfectionist, then you're going to be a harried mom. Making it a family effort made a big difference for me. That was pretty crazy thing. As we had the first two boys, it was easier, of course, and we didn't start homeschooling probably till after the third one was born, official homeschooling. But I tried to just at least 30 minutes before I knew Dad was coming home, gather the troops and everybody pick up. And that's part of making Dad coming home. The towels weren't folded perfectly. Oh, that's adorable. I love taking the towels, washing them, and putting them back up, hanging, not having to fold and rotate, but I do. Yes, thanks. This is funny to talk about. Okay, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, in the earliest, when the boys were little, the first couple of boys, I really had the expectation that you could do it all.
Yes.
And even though I wasn't, I did expect, and honestly, I didn't really expect the house to be white glove clean. It was more important to me that it was, at least was picked up. And some of those things, we didn't really talk about. And as we got into it, it caused some friction and things because Gail, it was just, she wanted things to be satisfying to me, but we hadn't really talked about it. And some of this stuff just came. It was unrealistic expectations on my part too. It wasn't so much from Gail. It was just the fact we had two boys who were getting into stuff. Man, I remember just setting up my garage and it was all nice and neat and toys were on perfectly organized on the shelves. I had little mock tools for my oldest son, his own little plastic hammer and screwdriver and everything, and I had those in a perfect spot, hanging on the side of my workbench, and it was all silhouetted so he knew where to put it back. Those things were never there. And it drove me nuts because I just had this, I thought if I just set it up, they'll put them back. And it didn't. And, I think that you start off with having these expectations, and after a while, you just find out what are the things that are really most important. And if you say that it's a hard time to let go of some of these things, then maybe you just really haven't reached that point of just complete frustration and just saying, is this really a battle I want to, is this the hill I want to die on? And it kind of went from there. And then especially when we got to the twins.
It did. I'm going to make a comment here on what Melissa said. She said at the last mentoring dinner that I talked about, does it line up with your priorities? Okay, so to me, that's as simple as people over objects or people over projects. Yeah. You're actually making it more important that things are in place than that you're prioritizing your kids and the fact that they're not perfect and they're learning, or even your wife is not perfect and doesn't always put things back in the right place.
And sometimes it works out, and other days things just go sideways, and you just got to have a little bit more flex. And that was important for me, particularly. I'll take the responsibility for that because most of this was just on me. I didn't see the stuff that Gail was going through during the day, and every season was different, but we had to just keep talking about this and determining what really is the most important priority at that time. And it really, when it boils down to it, ultimately it did. I wanted it. I didn't want it to be an either or. I wanted it to be a both and. But when push comes to shove, ultimately, I wanted you to have fun times with the kids.
Yes.
I didn't want the place to be a total, it's like just, what just happened here, World War III, but there was a priority for the relationships.
There was, and part of it for me was making him high enough up on the priority list that I would at least take the time, that last 30 minutes before he came home, and rally the troops and say, Daddy's coming home. Let's get everything picked up and cleaned for him. And sometimes we would even stand at attention at the door for him to come home. And it was really neat because it gave the kids that priority of Daddy, that we're doing this for him, we're cleaning it up for him, and actually we can all relax more because the house is cleaned up. But it wasn't always like that for me. And then after we had babies 3, 4, and 5 in very quick succession, then things changed. And how did things change for you?
Well, really, it was just a matter of it. We understood that life was never going to be the same at this point. And it was unrealistic for Gail to not only have 5 kids, 3, under the age of, 16 months or a couple years. And she was very, very capable, but it was just a lot. And so this was the life we had chosen, and we were happy with that. We wanted these kids, but it was unrealistic to think about her being able to homeschool and to do all of this on her own. And so the biggest thing is that we adopted more of this was a family responsibility, and it all just didn't fall to mom and just kind of doling out a few jobs. That really, housework then became a family project, and we had family work times where we would all do our part according to appropriate ages and so on. But I had to take some responsibility. All of a sudden, it wasn't just a thing of this was Gail's role, and it was all hands on deck. And it was a good thing. It changed it for our family because it caused there to be more of that, just that family ownership. Mm-hmm. And this was what it means to be a part of the Anderson family. It's not just where we are being served, we're all a part of this. This is our home. Mm-hmm. And if that was going to be expected of the kids, I had to lead in doing that. And so it was something that I could do for Gail, and it was important. I didn't want everybody to be on. It's funny you talk about them standing at attention.
Do you remember that?
And that was fun because they loved it. But if it ever came to a place where they had to do that because they were fearful of Dad was going to come home, that would have broke my heart. And I know that's not what we wanted. And so, it was just at that point that, and it probably should have happened earlier. But it's just that it became unsustainable.
Yes, it was survival mode.
It was survival mode, and we realized there's got to be a better way. And the better way was, this is a family affair. And it was a good thing for us.
So it's a constant balancing of choices and priorities
communication,
in your home.
Just working it out and being honest and open and talking about it.
Definitely. And for those of you that are perfectionists, I also want to recommend that you set one day a week where you're going to do all the cleaning with the family's help or however you do it. And then other days, if you need to have a midweek type mini clean, that's fine. But then train yourself to leave things alone. Your house can be clean enough that people are not getting sick if you clean pretty good once a week. And that's the key. You've got to have it clean enough that people aren't getting sick, but you don't have it perfectly white glove clean all the time. Now, that's something I should have at this stage of life, and I still don't. And I still leave things out.
It's still not important. The biggest thing is at least for us, and you'll have to determine your own standards, but for us it was just a matter of let's keep it picked up, because if every kid left out 2 toys, my gosh, it's a mess. And so we had to have those systems. It was 1 toy at a time, put it away when you're done, those kinds of things, because otherwise life just got, again, unsustainable. It was crazy. And we had to take responsibility.
Yes, especially as your kids get 2, 3, they can learn 1 toy at a time. No problem that you're done playing with this and want to play with something else. Yeah. Let's just put it back and then take out something else. And we've even trained our grandchildren, which has been wonderful because especially when I'm there, they'll do it. And they'll just look at me and say, 1 toy at a time, Nana. And then they'll pick it up and then go get something else. In other words, they are bringing to my attention that they are following that rule, and it's awesome. The weekly housework that we did was tremendous. We actually did it Saturday mornings. I can't remember what the time was, but it was a couple-hour time period. And we had trained our kids to do all sorts of jobs around the house, and there was times they did things, but this all changed to a one major weekly cleaning. And everybody had their responsibilities. I probably had a little bit less because I had to oversee what was going on, but we all coordinated and we got our things done.
And they're more domestically
capable
yes. today than I am. I mean, just because they know how to do that stuff.
And their wives, as far as the boys, their wives appreciate it, and I'm sure the husbands will appreciate what the girls can do as well.
And we also lightened up on some of our standards there, too.
We did.
I mean, they may have to clean their bathroom sink, and maybe it wouldn't be as perfect as us, but if it got anywhere close to 70, 80%, hey, that's good enough.
That's right.
Right now.
And my big deal, too, was, okay, if I'm going to do a real mini clean in the middle of the week where I'm going to clean the sinks again, if it didn't get completely cleaned on Saturday perfectly, that was okay. They're in training. We can help them. We can go back in there with them as we're doing our check and say, okay, does everything look good? Do you see any spots? Do you see any water that should be wiped up? And help train them to check their own work and critique their own work so that we don't have to come in and point things out. But that was a wonderful thing. As far as what your kids can do at different ages, we've talked about this a couple of different times. It is amazing what they can do. They are much more capable than you realize.
Even 3- and 4-year-olds, they would love
2-year-olds.
They love to help.
Oh, I have to tell this on Nellie. I taught her how to unload the silverware from the dishwasher last week, and it was just hilarious. It was showing her how to match and how to sort. These are great educational things that they need to learn. So she's putting a fork away, but she has it upside down. So I said, okay, honey, you need to turn it around so it fits. Turn it around. Well, instead of turning it top to bottom, she was flipping it side to side. So I said, okay, sweetie, and I turned it around, and she was able to make it fit. And then every piece of silverware I handed her after that, I didn't say turn around. It was handed to her properly, and yet she turned it side to side. She felt like that was part of putting the silverware away, was turning it around and then setting it down. Oh, it's just hilarious.
But they love to help.
They love that, and if you can catch them when they're ready, oh my gosh, you have it made.
And it takes a little bit longer perhaps because you have to monitor, but man, in the long run, it's worth it.
It is so worth it, so worth it. Okay, I was going to say that the book that I actually found that delineated times for everything, hi Saliji, that delineated ages for things was More Hours in My Day by Emily Barnes, and that is fantastic. So I kind of came up with my own list. I'll probably post it, give you a link to that on YouTube with today's scope, and you can look at that, but that at least gives you an idea. What? My 3-year-old can actually clean a toilet? Okay. And this is not slave labor. This is, we're all part of the team. We are all going to work together. We all want these standards. My goodness, if you don't have them participating as part of a team now, what's it going to be like later on when they're on a sports team or working for a company? You have to learn how to work together. So, are there times that you have a hard time getting the whole house picked up? Are there standards that you struggle with more than ever? Just wondering. I really do enjoy the whole idea of having the house picked up and not necessarily white glove clean.
Yeah, that's really
so
important for us.
Any other comments that you want to add, or feel free to go ahead and email me. My email is in the profile. And check out our blog if you haven't, KirbyAnderson.com. One of my favorite things about now making cleaning products, the boys love it, yes.
Yeah.
And you can use cleaning products, since you're making your own, that are not going to be harmful to them. That's what's so fantastic. And keep them doing it, because they're going to feel good about themselves and feel good about being a member of the team. So thanks for joining us today. My plan is to be on a couple more days this week and talk some more about household management. I did promise you we talk about meals. That's coming. So thank you all for joining us, and keep in touch. Have a great day.